I remember very vividly, being like in the middle of the night or something, and just jumping in the car, and out of fear of our lives.
Your mom.
Yeah.
You said her childhood was kind of filled with pain.
Yeah.
In what ways?
My mother's adopted. She never knew really where she came from. She was raised by two older parents that died when she was pretty young, and raised by her adopted cousins and aunts. I think never really having a true connection to any group of people, like never really having a family. Her mother was an alcoholic. She dealt with, she was married very young, and he was murdered, and there was just a lot of searching for family. And I think she created that by having 6 children, made a family for herself. But there was a lot of abuse and instability and movement in her life, and then eventually in ours.
And you said you always loved her, but you didn't really understand her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that as an adult, it's easier to look back and say something like that.
Right.
I think that as a young person without a support structure or system around her, she was just kind of trying to do all of this on her own. I didn't always understand the constant moving ahead rather than stopping, standing still, and examining oneself. When you have stability and you have a support system around you, it's easier to say that and be able to look at yourself, which I have as an adult.
Explain what would happen where she would fear for her life, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially you guys would have to immediately pack up
Yeah.
and move on.
It happened many times, and we'd never know when it was going to happen. But yeah, whether it was, physical abuse in the house, which happened on many occasions with different husbands.
And you would witness that.
Yes, witness it. A lot of verbal and emotional abuse as well. And I remember very vividly, being like in the middle of the night or something, and someone coming and a car pulling up, and all of us just taking what we could and just jumping in the car, and out of fear of our lives, just not being in a safe situation, and having to kind of go hide out for a little while in other people's homes and sleep on the floor, staying in motels, and just a lot of chaos in that way.
One time, I believe you heard gunshot and then
Yeah.
a thud.
I must have been 14 years old, and we were staying at, we would call them aunt and uncle, but they were not related to us, friends of my mom's from somewhere, and they lived in downtown LA, and there was a drive-by shooting, and I ended up with this guy bleeding on our porch and trying to help him, and just things I shouldn't have seen. There were guns in the house, and I remember my brother, finding one and pointing it at me, and just the thought of just no security. I felt that a lot as a child, and that was, just added to the anxiety that I had.
So your dad, you wake up, one day, I don't think you'd seen him since you were 2 years old, and decide you want to reconnect. What made you make that decision?
I think it was getting to a place in my young adult life, as a professional, as an artist, and wanting to understand who I am. And I think that it took looking back and connecting with my father to really understand that and become the person and the artist that I wanted to become. My oldest brother, Doug Jr., he was the one who reached out first and found him in Wisconsin. And I think it was maybe a year later that I called my brother and I said, I'm ready, I want to meet him. So it was a beautiful, reunion, I guess. And me and my brother Doug, we both resemble him so much. So the 3 of us, I felt we're connected in a different way.
Because you'd never even seen a photo, right?
I'd seen very few, but it was like looking at my brother. It was mind-blowing.
And how did the process of reconnecting compare to what you would have thought?
You know, you imagine it's going to be like this Lifetime movie, I guess. And then I was going to have this like emotional kind of outburst, but it wasn't. It was meeting a stranger, ultimately. And it took time to build an emotional bond and connection with him. But you know, I would never take back going through that and eventually meeting him.